Welcome to BreachLock's Adversarial Exposure Validation platform. We're going to call it AEV for short. What this is a fully autonomous pen testing / red teaming tool for your team to be able to use to simulate adversarial simulations, behavior, and mimic what APT groups would be able to do if they were able to breach inside your network or from the web. So our AEV solution is meant to be a tool for your teams to be able to use to either augment or hire a virtual red teamer or pen tester, for lack of a better term. What this has the capability of doing is autonomous testing of infrastructure and of APIs that are internal or public facing. So an anticipated use case for this would be we need to run continuous red teams throughout the year inside our infrastructure to assess risk, to assess the behaviors of what groups would do if they were to breach, and see what the risk of CVEs being exploited is. The beginning of the journey here inside AEV is first going to start from an internet-facing lens. So we need to run an investigation against your company, your organization, to do a couple different things. First, we want to figure out who you are as a company, the type of customers and clientele that you service, but also your assets, your tech stack, what exists out there on the web that APTs and threat actors may be able to use as context for engagements. So our first step here is going to be adding a seed domain. So let's just say this seed domain is breachlock.com. As soon as I create this domain, a public-facing investigation is going to launch with the intent of figuring out your footprint to the web. So subdomains, IP addresses of the servers hosting those applications, locations, and then also some context. When that investigation has finished, you can come in here and see the results. So if you've never engaged with BreachLock before and this is your first time, here after a couple minutes scan, you can see a list of all of our public-facing assets, what they're doing, and then just also some context about what it appears to be with a screenshot of the landing pages. Why is this information important for a AEV toolset? Well, because this info helps us marry it up into some threat intelligence feeds. So once that investigation is launched, we're going to assign either a nominal, a significant, or an elevated risk if any of these groups were to target your company. If I click into an APT1, I can say, okay, here's a description of what APT1 does, who they are, who they tend to target. They favor using these specific tools, and they also favor these TTPs. Based on that information about them and you, we think that they pose a significant risk if they were ever to target your company because you're the type of company they target, and these techniques may be successful against your specific tech suite. So what this is going to do here is it's going to later help influence the objectives throughout both the external and the internal engagements if you would like to emulate the behavior of any of these groups. Before we get there, we need to deploy some footholds internally so that we have a jump host in order to reach those inside assets. So we're going to come into the deployment phase here. Now, the AEV deployments, these are not agent-based. This does not need to live on every workstation or every endpoint. Think of this as a physical laptop that one of your pen testers would have. So creating a deployment is as easy as naming this. I tend to name it by location. And then choosing what type of hardware or operating system this is going to run on. So we do support Linux distros. We can run on Mac, either Intel or Silicon. We can run on Windows, and then we also do have an OVA file if you prefer to run on a hypervisor. Deploying this is as easy as dropping this command in command line on that host device. That's going to install all the dependencies that are needed throughout the testing engagement, and it's going to connect to our SaaS-based tenant here for you to be able to remotely manage. Now, once those footholds are deployed and you're able to reach the hosts that need to be in scope for testing, we're going to do something similar on the inside that we did on the outside. We're going to visualize what that surface looks like. So from within here, I can choose an individual foothold, and I'll be able to see all of my network interfaces and all hosts that are reachable by ping across various subnets. So here's a list of every host that I can ping using this foothold. And now I know that I can put these in scope for my internal engagements. So the next step is going to be to actually craft and launch those engagements. Up here, I'm going to go into the engagement stage. This is where you'll also be able to ingest all of the results. But first, we're going to create. So from within here, we currently have the ability to launch internal and external network pen tests / red teams. And we can also launch tests against REST-based APIs, both internal and external. For me right now, I want to launch an internal engagement and I want it to be somewhat red team focused. So let's just say this is my data center. I'm going to choose that live foothold that's able to reach the hosts that I want to target. Here I can explicitly allow hosts to be put in scope for testing. So just because we can reach 100 hosts doesn't mean that you want to actively test all of them. We will require your intervention here to add them. Here are those adversary profiles again. So if throughout this engagement you would like to mirror and mimic the behavior and activities of these APTs, you can put them in scope. Otherwise, we'll just do a base sweep and test any way that we can. From within here is how I get to dictate how I want this story to play out. So I had mentioned I want this to be more like a red team. I want a very low and slow engagement. Maybe I have CrowdStrike or a Sentinel-1, some sort of EDR solution in play in my infrastructure, and I want to see if I'm able to bypass those solutions. I also want to see if I have the ability to bypass alerts and alarms from the SOC, from the blue team, and remain undetected. On the other hand, we can also pump this up to an extreme engagement where this is very fast and very loud, simulating maybe somebody walking into a branch or a brick and mortar, plugging in a device with a reverse shell. What are they able to do until they are locked out of that environment? Here we'll let you set a threshold for the severity that you would like to report on. So maybe you don't have an SLA for low or informational findings, and you only care about medium and above. I'll set that threshold for medium. Or maybe you just want to configure a test to run every week on a Friday, and you only want to check for critical severity findings every week. You can set that threshold here. Now, within this exploitation phase here, we're going to let you choose individual technologies and individual tactics here for each of them. Everything is going to be enabled by default. But maybe I just want to check for my web servers. I want to do testing on exposed port 80s and 443s and the 8080s, the 8443s of the world. I want to do HTTP based attacks. I can just put those in scope here. And I can also choose individual vulnerabilities that are being pulled directly out of the National Vulnerability Database and put those in scope for testing as well. So again, everything is enabled by default, but maybe I only care to test for SSH related findings. Feel free to toggle these on and off as you see fit. And then finally, we're going to be greeted by some additional parameters. So whether I would like to run some advanced network recon, advanced web server recon, if this is an Active Directory environment, I would like to see whether I can become a domain joined user, or maybe if I can take over domain admin. If this is a hybrid Azure AD environment, I can also provide credentials here to make these authenticated scans. And then finally, I can attempt credential-based recovery as well. So if I see that there are web servers exposed, let's check for default credentials. Or maybe I'm able to pull password hashes out of individual technologies. Let's see if I can pull those hashes and crack them to use them elsewhere in that environment. Once I've finished setting these additional parameters, we're going to go ahead and start this engagement, which is where you get to track along in real time. Once I click Start Engagement, I'm going to come up into the Exploit tab, where I'm going to get to watch all of those kill chains play out. So here we can see there's some reconnaissance data. I can click into any of these and say, okay, there's an Nmap running for port 21. We found FTP running. It seems to be an out-of-date version of FTP. That's good context for some objectives. But these objectives are also going to be painted based off of the APTs and the threat intels that you put in scope for this engagement as well. So here I can see there's some FTP-based objectives. There's also some web applications that were exposed. So we're going to check var directories and look for any passwords in plain text. And you'll be able to watch these play out in real time. So as step one is occurring, here I can click in and see a screenshot of what's happening at step one. I'll also be given some context about what and why it's happening at this stage. And all of these kill chains are going to go through the entire attack path. So whether that takes 5 steps or it takes 25 steps, eventually you're going to be greeted by either a red box or by a green box. Now, if this is a red box, that means that we are confident that we are able to actively exploit this specific objective, and it could result in a lateral movement or taking over of a domain admin, etc. If this was a live environment, you would see a move laterally option in the top right of step 2 here. And your analyst or whoever is monitoring this tool is going to have to provide explicit permission in order to actively exploit. So what does that mean? We do not want this to be a rogue agent just going through your environment, creating new footholds, laterally moving. We do want to let you know if it is possible, but we're giving you the power to satisfy that requirement and also to initiate that step. So if I was to click the move laterally option here, it'll branch off into new objectives based off of that subnet, that VLAN, wherever the new foothold is placed, and you'll see all of those individual kill chains play out as well. Now, on the other hand, we're also going to let you know where we hit some bumps in the road. So again, we set those parameters in the beginning, whether we wanted to be loud or quiet, whether we wanted to try and evade EDR solutions and alerts, or if we just wanted to do everything that we could. Here in these green boxes, we're going to let you know that our efforts are stopped and we have confidence that these cannot be exploited for these particular reasons. So we'll give you some context here about why we've ended this kill chain to give you confidence that your technical controls that you have in place are blocking these efforts. Now, eventually, all of these individual kill chains and objectives are going to end, and it's going to be time for us to ingest those results in a couple different ways. We're going to come back into the engage stage here, where I can see all of those engagements across currently in progress and completed stages. But let's say I want to take a look at all vulnerabilities that were exposed. So think of these as individual vulnerabilities that you would get out of a scanner. So your out-of-date versions of technologies that are in play. Here we'll let you see all of those critical, high, medium, low severity findings. We'll give you an analysis of what that vulnerability is. Here we're going to give you some tailored remediation narratives as well as some tailored references. And then we'll also let you see that proof of concept screenshot to prove that this was a vulnerable asset. Next, we're also going to let you see the entire MITRE attack framework that was used throughout the entire engagement. So from within all of these, I can click in, see some various TTPs that were used. If I toggle this button on, it's only going to show me TTPs that resulted in exploited vulnerabilities. And then finally, you can download the report here. It'll download as a PDF. It's going to read similar to a pen test report. So an executive summary, a scope, a methodology, and then those detailed findings with proof of concept screenshots for the kill chains. Overall, this is our adversarial exposure validation tool set here at BreachLock. And again, the intent is to augment your security teams to assist with red team functionalities, help out with the blue teams, help your SOC understand risk across your infrastructure, but truly just to make pen testing and red teaming autonomous instead of just a point in time assessment. So thank you very much for the time today. If you have any interest in trying out AEV in a proof of concept, please reach out to BreachLock. We'd be happy to do so. And we're looking forward to talking to you soon. Thanks.